Hello, my name is Marília, and today I'll be presenting my work entitled Electrofacies Definition and Zonation of the Lower Cretaceous Barra Velha Formation Carbonate Reservoir in the pre-salt sequence of the Santos Basin, southeast Brazil. The pre-salt carbonate reservoirs are highly heterogeneous and exhibit vertical and lateral variations within the reservoir that are reflected in their electrofacious characteristics. As an electrofacies is a set of well-log responses which characterize a rock interval and may represent one or multiple lithofacies with similar petrophysical properties. The identification of zones in well logs may be an arduous and time-consuming process, especially when dealing with complex and large amounts of data. In this context, artificial neural networks have frequently been used in petroleum engineering studies for pattern recognition, classification, and prediction. So the objective of this work was to use the electrofacies for the zonation of the heterogeneous reservoir in the Barra Velha Formation and to use unsupervised artificial neural network based on self-organizing maps for the electrofacies definition and, consequently, the zonation of this complex reservoir. Santos Basin is located in the southeast region of the Brazilian continental margin, and the general location of the study area is indicated here in red. And here is the Lower Cretaceous stratigraphic chart for the Santos Basin, highlighting the Barra Velha Formation, which can be divided by the intralagoas unconformity into Upper Barra Velha and Lower Barra Velha. As for the methods, we have used well logs covering the entire Barra Velha Formation interval for 21 wells, including conventional logs and mineralogical model for the most common minerals found in the Barra Velha Formation. The wells were also classified according to their relative structural positions by comparing the depth of the top of the Barra Velha Formation in each well, identifying structural high, intermediate, and low positions. So in structural high wells indicated in red, the top of the formation is in relatively shallow positions, and in structural low wells indicated in green, the top of the formation is in greater depths, and there are also wells in intermediate structural positions indicated in yellow. These well logs were used as input for an unsupervised artificial neural network based on self-organizing maps from the TechLog software. And using a dendrogram, the data was classified into 4 clusters, so 4 electrofacies were defined by the neural network. And here is the 50 by 50 self-organizing map with one of the 4 electrofacies assigned to each node of the map. Then the well log responses and the electrofacies were used to define the zones in the Barra Velha Formation. The data used also included, for 3 of the wells, the intervals of Barra Velha 100 and 200 corresponding to the upper sequence, and Barra Velha 300 corresponding to the lower sequence, and thin section images and lithological descriptions were available for 7 of the wells, indicated by the purple bars. This lithological information, along with the log responses, were then used to characterize the defined zones. As for the results, based on the log information and also the stacking patterns of the electrofacies along the wells, 5 zones were defined. So from top to bottom, there is Lula's finger zone and zones A, B, C, and D, and also a zone presenting characteristics of both zones B and C. And here are the 21 wells and their corresponding electrofacies and zones. And based on thin section images and core descriptions, a lithological association was defined for each of the 4 electrofacies. And using the histograms, the frequency of each electrofacies in each zone was analyzed. So here is the frequency of electrofacies 1, 2, 3, and 4 in Lula's finger zone, and the same for all the other zones. And this was done to define the most representative lithologies of each of the 5 zones. And statistical values for the logs which had the greatest influence on the definition of the zones were analyzed to help in the characterization of the zones. So Lula's finger zone was identified in all 21 wells, and the most significant characteristic from the well log responses is a large range of gamma ray values, probably due to the clay intercalations marking the 9 peaks characteristic of Lula's finger zone. And the zone is composed mainly of grainstones, mudstones, and shrubstones. Zone A was also identified in all 21 wells, and it shows low gamma ray and high resistivity values, and is composed mainly of grainstones and shrubstones. Zone B was identified in 11 wells, and it shows characteristics similar to Zone A with low gamma ray and high resistivity values, and is also composed mainly of reworked material, grainstones, and shrubstones. However, the zone shows an increase in mudstone and decrease in shrubstone compared to Zone A. Zone C was identified in 5 wells, and it shows high sonic and gamma ray values and significantly lower resistivity values indicating clay content. The zone also presents the thicker intervals compared to the other zones and is composed mostly of finer materials including mudstones, packstones, and spherulite stones. Zone D was identified in 17 wells, and it shows high gamma ray values and a large range of sonic, neutron porosity, and gamma ray values, which may indicate intercalation of more compact or cemented zones with more porous zones. And the zone is composed mostly of packstones, but it also shows significant content of grainstones, hudstones, mudstones, spherulite stones, and shrubstones. And here are the 3 wells indicating the depths of the Barra Velha 100, 200, and 300, and they seem to show some correlation with the depths defined for the zones, with Barra Velha 100 corresponding to Lula's finger zone in Zone A, Barra Velha 200 corresponding to Zone B, Zone BC, and Zone C, and Barra Velha 300 corresponding to Zone D. And this correlation was extended to all the other wells. So, considering the structural position of the wells, the structural high wells present Zone B, but not Zone C or BC. And most of the intermediate and structural low wells, they present Zones C and BC, but not Zone B. So, considering that Zones B and C do not appear in the same wells, this intermediate portion of the reservoir was analyzed considering the location and distribution of the wells presenting or Zone B or Zone C. And wells presenting Zone B are located to the east of the study area, while Zone C mostly occur to the west. So based on the characteristics observed for each zone, a depositional model was proposed. So the deposition of the Barra Velha Formation possibly initiated in a shallow lake environment, with Zone D presenting mostly packstones, but also significant content of reworked material and spherulite stones and shrubstones. The intermediate portion of the reservoir indicates a change in the depositional environment, with Zone C indicating relatively deeper lake environment with greater clay content and greater thicknesses, contrasting with Zone B, characterized by reworked materials and indicating a shallower depositional environment. And by the end of the deposition of the formation, the environment probably evolved to a more homogeneous setting, considering the more homogeneous thicknesses of Zone A and the fact that the zone is present in all analyzed wells. And shallowing upwards is also indicated by the increase in shrubstones and decrease in clay content from Zone B to Zone A. And to correlate the zones defined in the wells with the seismic data, sections of a 3D seismic were analyzed, and the seismic data covers a smaller area inside the study area, named Pilot Area 1, indicated here in red. And here is one example of the analyzed sections, and the section is indicated here in purple on the map. So the top of each zone was used as a marker, and the zones seem to have a good correlation with the seismic, since the top of each zone seemed to follow one same reflector. So the top of the reservoir is indicated here in pink. Zone B is indicated in yellow to the east. Zone C is indicated in light blue to the west. Zone BC appears in green between zones B and C. And here is also Zone D indicated in dark blue. So as for the conclusions, the unsupervised artificial neural network served as an efficient first step for the definition of the zones, given the complex input data set, reducing the time of reservoir characterization. And although the unsupervised methodology used did not require the input of the lithological information, this complementary data was essential to support the lithological characterization of the electrofacies. Thank you.